A reading from the book of Daniel chapter 6. And Darius the Mede received the kingdom at the age of 62. Daniel in the lion pit. The satraps resent Daniel's promotion. It pleased Darius to appoint 120 satraps over his whole kingdom, and over them 3 presidents, of whom Daniel was one, to whom the satraps were to be responsible. This was to safeguard the king's interests. This Daniel, by virtue of the outstanding spirit residing in him, was so evidently superior to the other presidents and satraps that the king considered appointing him to rule the whole kingdom. The presidents and satraps, in consequence, started hunting for some affair of state by which they could discredit Daniel. But they could find nothing to his discredit and no case of negligence. He was so punctilious that they could not find a single instance of maladministration or neglect. So these men thought, we shall never find a way of discrediting Daniel unless we find something to do with the law of his God. So the presidents and satraps went in a body to the king and said, King Darius, live forever. We are all agreed, presidents of the realm, magistrates, satraps, counselors and governors, that the king should issue an edict enforcing the following regulation. Whoever within the next 30 days prays to anyone, divine or human, other than to yourself, your majesty, is to be thrown into the lion's den. Your majesty, ratify the edict at once by signing this document, making it unalterable as befits the law of the Medes and the Persians, which cannot be revoked. King Darius accordingly signed the document embodying the edict. Daniel's prayer. Although Daniel knew that the document had been signed, he continued to go to his house, where the windows of his upstairs room faced towards Jerusalem. 3 times each day he went down on his knees, praying and giving praise to God as he had always done. These men came along in a body and found Daniel praying and pleading with God. Then they went to the king and reminded him of the royal edict. Have you not signed an edict forbidding anyone for the next 30 days to pray to anyone, divine or human, other than to yourself, your majesty, on pain of being thrown into the lion's den? The king replied, the decision stands. In conformity with the law of the Medes and the Persians, it cannot be revoked. So they said to the king, Your Majesty, this man Daniel, one of the exiles from Judah, disregards both you and the edict which you have signed. He is at his prayers 3 times each day. When the king heard these words, he was deeply distressed and determined to save Daniel. He racked his brains until sunset to find some way to save him. But the men kept pressing the king. Your Majesty, remember that in conformity with the law of the Medes and the Persians, no edict or decree can be altered when once issued by the king. Daniel is thrown to the lions. Then the king ordered Daniel to be brought and thrown into the lion pit. The king said to Daniel, "Your God, whom you serve so faithfully, will have to save you." A stone was then brought and laid at the mouth of the pit, and the king sealed it with his own signet and with that of his noblemen, so that there could be no going back on the original decision about Daniel. The king returned to his palace, spent the night in fasting. No food was brought to him, and sleep eluded him. At the first sign of dawn, he got up and hurried to the lion pit. As he approached the pit, he called anxiously to Daniel, "Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve so faithfully, been able to save you from the lions?" Daniel answered the king, "May your majesty live forever. My God sent his angel who sealed the lions' jaws. They did me no harm, since in his sight I am blameless. Neither have I ever done you any wrong, your majesty." The king was overjoyed and ordered Daniel to be released from the pit. Daniel was released from the pit and found to be quite unhurt because he had trusted in his God. Then the king sent for the men who had accused Daniel and had them thrown into the lion pit, and their wives and children too, and before they reached the floor of the pit, the lions had seized them and crushed their bones to pieces. The king's profession of faith. King Darius then wrote, "To all nations, peoples, and languages dwelling throughout the world, may you prosper more and more. This is my decree. Throughout every dominion of my realm, let all tremble with fear before the God of Daniel. He is the living God. He endures forever. His kingdom will never be destroyed, and his empire never come to an end. He saves, sets free, and works signs and wonders in heaven and on earth. He has saved Daniel from the power of the lions." This Daniel flourished in the reign of Darius and the reign of Cyrus the Persian. Daniel's visions. Daniel's dream, the 4 beasts. The word of the Lord.